What's up, guys and gals, and welcome back to another Division 2 build video. Well, one of sorts. But before we get into that, if you happen to be new to the channel or you're just enjoying the content, then be sure to ground and pound that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to reach up there, trigger the bell, and have post notifications on so you never miss a live stream or a video that's uploaded. Well, some absolute crap came across my feed and I had to do one of these moves. Oh yes, facepalm. Yes, and it was a Berserk build, and let me tell you, I was curious. And within the first 2 minutes, I realized this dude, or dudette, does absolutely not know what he's actually talking about. The build is ass backwards. So I take it upon myself to set the record straight. So all you that are getting the wool pulled over your eyes, that they're preying on you like you're just sheep out there just because you may not have the time to actually put in and dedicate to a game, and you may not fully understand synergy and how builds are designed and how they're supposed to be put together and how the talents work. And I see this all the time. They will just change like their gloves as far as just re-roll the weapon damage on it to a different weapon. And then they will create a new thumbnail and say this is how you're supposed to do. Then it'll show them either killing their friends or some of their subs in the DZ and say, well, this is how it's supposed to be. But if you know how builds work and synergize, you can immediately know that these are just some greasy used car salesmen that are just presenting some falsehood to you for views. They're preying on you. They absolutely do not know what they're talking about. They present themselves as knowing what they're talking about because they have a sharp, slick tongue, just like a greasy used car salesman trying to sell you on it. But they absolutely do not know what they're talking about. So we're going to take it back to basics. And speaking of, since Berserk was the topic, I'm going to show you how the build doctor, myself, Relentless XRG, and how Berserk is supposed to be properly made and how the talent is supposed to be synergized with other things and how it's supposed to be done properly. I'm not going to fool you. I'm here to help you. So first, let's start out with the Berserk talent. Berserk states, plus 10% weapon damage for every 20% of max armor depleted. Requires 7 or more offensive Legos. Also requires shotgun, SMG, now an LMG, and an assault rifle. So, the basics and the premise of Berserk. The more armor you have, the more that has to be stripped away from you in order to get a proc. If you have 400k armor, you need 20% of that to be stripped away. So basically you have to lose, see, 10% of 400k is 40k, so 20% is 80k. So you have to lose 80k armor just to get 10% weapon damage. That's not really doing too much, especially, you're already down to 300k armor just to get a 10% buff. Is that really worth it? Or would you want to get a 50% buff, the way, the most bang for your buck, to really maximize the output and damage of Berserk? And how to do that is spec into health over armor, because with Berserk you want your armor gone. So once your armor is gone, you're surviving off your health pool. The more health you have, the more damage you can take, because on a 1-to-1 ratio when it comes to armor and health, they both can withstand the same amount of damage. The only thing that affects armor differently from health is things like the 2-piece True Patriot or mods that have damage to armor. Likewise applies to health, except for damage to health is the only thing that differentiates the damage that you do to health versus the armor, and that's just damage to armor and damage to health. Now an AR has baked in damage to health. And there's a lot of arguments out there, well, it doesn't matter if you have, 350k armor or 400k armor with that 29% damage to health, then they're going to eat through that health, like it's, nobody's business. Because the Eagle Bearer is out there and, oh my goodness, let's cower. Well, that's the way the game is supposed to be. There's risk and reward. But let's say you have, like the build that I have currently on now, 343k armor. And once all your armor is gone, yes, you get into your health pool, but you're getting a 50% buff. So if you're Eagle Bearer, if you have one, is already at, say, 32 or 33, or let's just say a borderline of a rounded off to 30k. And you're getting a 50% increase in damage. So you're going to be hitting for over 40k. Now, I do believe that if you land your shots, you're going to be able to out DPS someone that has absolutely no health and only are basing it, off of a 311-7 type setup, which is typical in the Dark Zone. You can still mow them down, inflict enough damage, and cause them to retreat. But you can also apply things to Berserk builds to increase and further that damage output, such things like pulse. The chest piece that I currently have on kind of goes in that direction because it has skill power as well as weapon damage and, of course, 47,891 health. And then when it comes to a backpack, Murakami is a good way to go because it gives you 8% health per having that one piece. And then you can apply, such as I have here, another 35,135 health. And of course you want Vital. I get an additional 20% health. So off this one piece, I'm getting 28% health plus 35,135 health. And that's what you want basically for a chest piece as well. You don't want harden, you don't want a percentage value of armor. Either you want a percentage of health and a good health roll. So if you're just putting skill power, even though it's the new meta kind of thing, off to the wind and just want to stack health, instead of skill power where I have this, if I had, let's say, like one of those chest pieces that was just in the vendor a few weeks ago, I believe it had like 20% health on it. So if you add another 20% health to that 278 skill power that I have, that is going to significantly bump me up to almost 400k health and still have 195k armor. So all in all, almost 600k toughness when you got greasy content creators putting out builds with 320k armor and 100k health with a max toughness around 420k. Even with that Eagle Bearer and the plus 29% baked in, damage to health, you're still going to out DPS them because you want all your armor stripped. You're going to be surviving off your health pool. And even with a mediocre healer ball at your feet or a pistol at your feet and just standing there and even trying to face tank, you're going to out DPS them. But if you utilize your cover and things of that nature, and let's say they push upon you, then you definitely want Cloaked on your knee pads. But yet, if you're trying to use Berserk, let's say from end cover, then you probably want to go with the likes of Patience. But if you're more or less the running gun type and you throw caution to the wind and don't necessarily use cover and you're like at the forefront of your squad in PvP, then you want to run Cloaked, especially for those drones, shields, and people that want to do the figure eights and the piss pulls and stand there. That way, once your armor is gone and you want it gone, then Cloak is procced when your armor is depleted, because you want it that way. Nearby enemy skills are disrupted for 10 seconds and can occur once every 30 seconds. So for 10 seconds, they won't be getting any heals from their pistols. And it synergizes well with Berserk because you want your armor stripped off. You want to survive off your health pool. So for these greasy content creators that are putting out build videos of 300k armor on 100k health and expect to do PvP with it, and they think they got some clips because they got their buddies or some bots in the Dark Zone, to stand there while they shoot them on a crappy build. Well, if you can do that with a crappy build, then that just says a lot about the players that, they're actually going against, right? So, my friends, don't be fooled. Don't buy into the whole hype just because they sound, slick and tongue and like the everyday used car salesman, and make presume to make you to think that they actually know what they're talking about. In essence, they're just causing you more frustration and headache by telling you something that's viable, but it's really trash, and then sending you off into the Dark Zone. And if you're new to the PvP, or you're still, a greenhorn, so to speak, in the PvP area, then, that frustration is going to mount because you're going to constantly blame yourself, thinking, well, other people probably can just use that build better. I just got to, get better with the build. Well, you started out the fight being handcuffed and one-legged and one-armed because you believe these greasy content creators that throw out a trash video just for views, and they themselves don't even know what the heck they're talking about. In case in point, just like the Berserk builds that are out there. You have all these other builds, such as Unstoppable Force, Bloodsucker, Unbreakable. They're dependent off having armor over health. Berserk is the exact opposite. That's why, they put that in the game to have a difference, because they didn't want it everything to depend on as far as just stacking armor on top of armor on top of armor. They wanted to change the pace. So they give you a damage buff once your armor is stripped away. And that's what makes actually a health pool viable. Because you can take just as much damage with your health that as you can your armor. So if you had 300k armor and 300k health, both would still take the same amount of damage. But the only thing that differs is, like I said previously, damage to armor and damage to health. So do not be fooled, my friends. Stack health whenever and wherever possible. And to get extra damage, you can use the Healer Guard with the 2 offensive mod slots. But if you want to go the Pulse way, then you can still use a Healer Guard to where you get some skill power, and then you grab a chest such as the one that I have here that has, skill power on it, as well as weapon damage and a good chunk of health, as well as vital on it. And of course, this has another offensive mod slot. And then you go with a Healer Guard mask that has a utility in it as well. But instead of 2 blues, you might want to go in the direction, let's say you put this here, and then we'll just throw a random mod in there, for instance, just to get those yellow Legos up. And then even if you wanted to, you could go with the likes of a really a large amount and just do away with the Healer Guard and go with a Fenris here if you don't have a Fenris chest piece. But the Fenris chest piece is definitely the way to go. So let's just slap that on. So we're at 4. Let's see, is this a utility or yes, another utility slot. So we'll just throw that in there. And you can take your time and actually put in mods, to counteract that. But then you're probably thinking, Relentless, you're still missing out on 2 offensive Legos because Berserk is not procced. Well, that's because I don't have any offensive mods in these holster here. But we'll just slap just 2 on for craps and giggles, right? Just prove a point. So bam. There you go, a 785 if you want, even more damage and use the multiplicative damage of Spotter. So now you have Spotter and Berserk and still have 275k health. Yes, it's not quite as good as more or less the just having the over 340k health, and with that right roll on a chest piece, instead of the skill power I have on this one, get a percentage of health. And then you can fairly easily get up to 380 and almost hit that apex of health pool at 400k health and still have almost 200k armor. But let's say you want a little bit extra armor. Well, in the Healer Guard knee pads where you have Cloaked and that attribute of health as well, the 2 defensive mod slots, you can easily change those out, and instead of health, put in armor ones and then a percentage armor, so that way you can get up to still like 220, 230k armor, and then still be 250, 260k health. You want your survivability may not be as good, but it depends on what skill power rolls you actually have, because depending on your rolls, you can still get a decent amount of healing off of your chem launcher if you have the right mods. And as you can see, I don't really have too great of mods here, but I can still get, almost an 88,000 piss pool that I can drop at my feet. And on top of that, let's say you want to go the LMG route. Well, I was planning on putting up this later on today, but this is just a glimpse of an LMG build using Berserk, but also the two-piece True Patriot for, getting that additional armor shred. But we'll go through that in a later date and time when I actually unveil this build video a little bit later. But the key thing is, do not be fooled by these trash, greasy content creators that are putting out build videos just for view that don't know what the hell they're doing or talking about. They're going with armor over health on a Berserk build, and just that statement alone, for those that actually knows how to create builds, that is ass backwards when it comes to Berserk. That's good for Unbreakable, Bloodsucker, Unstoppable Force, and basically every other build, but not Berserk. So this is just more or less a division public service announcement, and this is Relentless. Don't be fooled. Don't be a sheep. We'll see you fudging later.